All right, good morning and welcome everyone to the Chamber's Government Affairs Forum featuring Massachusetts Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mariano. Mr. Speaker, you're quite a popular guy. We've got about 350 people in the room here today. Looking forward to your remarks. I know most of you. I'm Jim Rooney, President and CEO of the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce. And we want to thank Speaker Mariano for joining us today, a longtime friend of the Chamber, and it's wonderful to have him once again for a Government Affairs Forum event. On behalf of the entire business community, I want to recognize a few of the Speaker's colleagues that have joined us here today. Chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, Aaron Michaelwitz, where are you? Over here. Mr. Chairman, we'll talk later. Speaker Pro Tem, Kate Hogan. Kate, where are you? Assistant Majority Leader, Alice Peisch. The second Assistant Majority Leaders, Frank Moran and Paul Donato. Chair of the Committee on Telecom, Utilities, and Energy, Mark Cusack. Mark, where are you? The Chair of the House Committee on Federal Funding, Policy, and Accountability, Kathleen Lenatra. I'm sure that's a busy committee these days. Chair of the Joint Committee on Education, Kenneth Gordon. Thank you. And Chair of Economic Development, Carol Fiola. And I also want to welcome Representative Tommy Vitolo, Representative Ted Phillips as well. And we're also joined by a number of former elected officials in the room, and I want to welcome them and thank you for your service and your partnership with the Chamber. As we get into the events, I want to highlight a few upcoming events. On May 7th, we'll feature Senate President Karen Spilka at our next Government Affairs Forum, so we'll be able to compare notes, I think, between today and May 7th and see how we're doing. And on May 20th, please be sure to join us for the Chamber's annual meeting, which, as most of you know, convenes over 1,500 business and civic leaders here in the Greater Boston area. This year, we're honoring three great 2025 distinguished Bostonians, Dr. Ann Klebanski, President and CEO of Mass General Brigham, Dr. Michael Curry, President and CEO of the Massachusetts League of Community Health Centers, and Jane Steinmetz, the Boston office managing partner of EY. So three great leaders in our community and our business community, all of whom step out to make this a better place for everybody. So we're thankful about that. I hope you'll join us at that annual meeting. You can find out more about that and all of our Chamber events at bostonchamber.com. I want to give some special recognition as we begin the program to two of our partners in this event, starting with our friends at Comcast. Many times at the beginning I mentioned that Comcast helps bring these Government Affairs Forum to a wider audience, but I did want to highlight that Comcast recently launched a new program called Comcast Rise here in Boston and in other major cities across the country. This RISE initiative will award 100 Boston recipients with transformative grants that include business consultation, technology services, and media strategy. And please join me in thanking Comcast for supporting our region's small business community and entrepreneurs in this program. And I also want to give thanks to our long-standing partner in this program as a sponsor of the Government Affairs Forum, my friend Mihal Chamberlain in Bank of America. It's always great to work with Mihal and Bank of America. But in just 11 days, the world will be watching Boston watching athletes cross the finish line on Boylston Street. And that event in and of itself is important to this community. But also important is the 176 charities in our region that will benefit from the funds that are raised through the Boston Marathon charity program that Bank of America has only scaled over the last couple of years. So please join me in thanking Bank of America for all of that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Michal Chamberlain, President, Bank of America, and a member of the Chamber of Executive Committee, to introduce Speaker Mariano.
All right, thanks for the kind introduction, Jim. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Great to see a packed room for our third series of the season, where we'll have Speaker Ron Mariano come up in a brief minute. Thanks for bringing up the marathon, Jim. This will be the second year of our sponsorship along with the BAA. Our team, the BAA, and many cities and towns across the Commonwealth are excited and busy as we prep for 11 days from now and bring the world to Boston. And last year, as someone who grew up in the area, it made me so proud to be inside the ropes of this great race that I grew up going to, and the pride that the city has, and frankly the state and the region. Our employees, our teammates have really gotten behind it, and we're really excited to be sponsoring again this year. I also see a number of our Bank of America charity partners that are out here. Jim mentioned last year we raised almost $46 million for charities. That was a new record, and our plan this year, with many of you in the room who have runners that are committing their bodies and sacrificing along the way to raise money for so many of these community leaders that are making a big impact here and making a difference. And that was a big reason why we got behind the sponsorship, is not only you bring in this world-class iconic race, but it does good for so many in the community. So our plan is to help you raise the additional dollars to break new records this year. So that's our goal, and we appreciate everybody's support behind it. Hopefully you've seen some of the advertising around the Prudential and the buildings. We're trying to put the spotlight on the runners that are doing all the great work. So looking forward to a successful event in 11 days. And so onward to our task at hand this morning. That's introducing the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Ronald Mariano, a lifelong resident of Quincy Point and dedicated public servant. Speaker Mariano has represented the 3rd Norfolk District of the Massachusetts House of Representatives since 1991. Throughout his career, Speaker Mariano has been a driving force behind groundbreaking legislation in the Commonwealth focused on civil rights, LGBTQ+ legislation, health care, reproductive justice, gun control, and education. While serving as the House Chair of the Joint Committee on Financial Services in 2006, Speaker Mariano was a key architect of the Commonwealth's landmark health care reform, which served as a model for the Affordable Health Care Act. Speaker Mariano, we're thrilled to have you with us today, and without further ado, please welcome me in joining the Speaker to the stage. Thank you.
I've been around a long time. Thank you, Mio. Good morning. Before we begin, I want to just take a minute to thank Jim Rooney and the entire Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to speak with you all this morning, and for the work that the Chamber does to engage the Boston business community with the legislative process, a process that is unique and different from what you might be used to, but we think it's very effective. You'll have to forgive me. I've had a cold for a week, but I'm under direct orders from Secretary Kennedy, the Health and Human Services, to attend as many crowded events as possible and to infect as many people. We're trying to achieve herd immunity. You can tell where I get my information. It's also great to be joined today by a number of my colleagues from the House, without whom last session's work would not have been possible. When I addressed the chamber last year, we were in the midst of that work. And very truthfully, if you had told me that we would eventually reach an agreement with the Senate on every bill that was in conference committee negotiations, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have taken the odds. But we did it. We passed a sweeping economic development bill, clean energy legislation, 5 separate healthcare bills that will increase affordability and help stabilize the system, and the largest investment in housing production in the history of Massachusetts. And I want to thank Governor Healy and Senate President Spilka and my colleagues in the House for taking the collaborative approach that is required to get these significant legislation over the finish line. While I'm incredibly proud of all that we accomplished, there is still a lot more work to be done in order to make Massachusetts an affordable place for folks to advance their careers, start a business, and raise a family. When the governor took office, she was very concerned about our competitiveness. We began with the same sense of purpose, understanding that the uncertainty of the moment only elevates the importance of the work that we're doing here. Just yesterday, for you folks who take the tea to get here, we voted to pass a $1.3 billion supplemental budget that utilizes the surplus fair share revenue that I'm glad you people came and stayed. We were afraid that everyone was going to be in New Hampshire. We'd have to be televising this. But because you stayed, that surplus number was $1.3 billion, a significant amount of money that we put right into the tea and into the educational programs that were important to our constituents. Last year's budget made the largest ever investment in the MBTA, an important step towards ensuring that every resident in Greater Boston area has access to safe and reliable public transportation. This year, the House will expand on that investment. As we work to finalize our budget proposal for the upcoming fiscal year, we look forward to building on the nearly $800 million that this week's supplemental budget included for the MBTA. This ensures historic levels of support for public transportation. It's going to allow the T to continue to make much-needed improvements. It'll also ensure that the T can meet their debt obligations. The House understands that a strong MBTA isn't just vital for the health and prosperity of our cities and towns. It's a critical facet of our statewide economy. As you know, employees across the Commonwealth rely on public transportation to get to work every day, which is really why this money is so important. And I look forward to seeing how the Commonwealth's public transportation system can continue to improve as a result of these new investments. We feel that we have an administration of the T that will take the T to new heights if we give it the support they need. And I also want to take a moment and thank you all, the members of this chamber, for generously donating millions of dollars for these investments when you filed your taxes last year. So you all had a part in this. So. I'm having a good time. As I mentioned earlier, Chairman Michaelwitz in the House Committee on Ways and Means are working to put the finishing touches on their budget proposal for the upcoming fiscal year. As the chairman will tell you, that process is incredibly difficult to navigate under normal circumstances. And as we all know from yesterday, this is anything but normal. When I spoke with you all last year, President Biden was still in office, which meant that Massachusetts had a reliable partner at the federal level. On January 20th, though, we lost that partner, and now as much as $15 billion for Massachusetts could be in jeopardy. Since taking office again, President Trump has decimated institutions like the Department of Education, fired people left and right, thousands of civil servants, and worked to exact revenge on some of his political opponents. And with the help of Elon Musk, whatever that is, Trump is wreaking havoc on programs that millions of vulnerable Americans rely on, citing funding for cancer and Alzheimer's research, and slashing veterans' benefits, cuts to NIH research funding, particularly devastating for Massachusetts, as the Commonwealth's institutions have been among the top recipients of that funding in this country in previous years. Musk himself has actually said that he thinks the cuts haven't gone far enough. And the next step will be to consider significant cuts to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And as I saw in the news this morning, the House will be maybe trying to take up a budget today and get their budget done, which was postponed yesterday because they felt the cuts weren't deep enough. President Trump isn't just satisfied with cutting government budgets, though. He wants to reduce the value of your 401ks. So his trade war has caused the stock market to plummet with huge price increases. I don't have to tell you folks that. You all know that. Everyone's watching the financial numbers. And, of course, the president's concern was magnanimous when he said he really couldn't care less. So, in Massachusetts alone, Trump's tariffs could cost residents hundreds of millions of dollars in additional energy costs, a challenge that will be further exacerbated by his executive order that put a pause on all new offshore wind development, a pause on what we thought would be an easy way for Massachusetts to meet their carbon neutral goals. That order that he sent out will force us to continue to rely on fossil fuels, which will make it more difficult to bring down costs through energy diversification. I could also put the Commonwealth's ever-important climate goals, it could also put our climate goals out of reach. What perhaps is even more concerning is that Trump is attempting to do much of this unilaterally, in defiance of the separation of powers principle that is outlined in the Constitution, and with seemingly no regard for the damage that he's doing in the process. Even Trump's strongest supporters will tell you that what he's doing is necessary because government is inherently wasteful and inefficient, and that circumventing Congress and the courts is a small price to pay for doing what needs to be done. Well, for some, that may be an appealing argument, especially during periods of significant economic anxiety. But don't be fooled into believing that it's anything more than a political strategy designed to take advantage of the anger that so many voters often feel towards government. From the roads that we drive on, to the schools that our kids attend, to the police officers and firefighters that keep us safe, to the Social Security checks and Medicare coverage that allow our seniors to retire with dignity. Each of us interact with different facets of government every day. During my time in the House, I have seen on countless occasions that government can, in fact, be an agent for good and help in the solution of addressing waste and inefficiency in government. The best way isn't to eliminate vital programs. It's to reform those programs so that they work better. This is the approach that Massachusetts, perhaps more often than any other state, has taken time and time again. And I firmly believe that we are better as a state because of it. I'm not here to say Massachusetts is perfect. We're pretty close. Nowhere really is. The Commonwealth is facing an affordability crisis, one that continues to drive people out of Massachusetts. Just as we have used government in the past to increase access to health care or to cultivate new industries here in the Commonwealth, like the life sciences sector, we must now ask what government can do to address the affordability challenges that are motivating residents to move to other states. Before I get into what government can do, I want to be very clear about what we won't do. As the House works to develop our budget proposal for the upcoming fiscal year, I want to say here and now that our fiscal 26 budget will not raise taxes or fees on any residents or businesses here in the Commonwealth. I thought that might get a hand. I'm incredibly proud of the fact that last session the legislature passed and Governor Haley signed into law the largest tax cut that Massachusetts has seen in a generation. That legislation provided financial relief for residents at all income levels and for businesses based in Massachusetts. Part of a continued focus on making the Commonwealth more affordable and more competitive with other states. Now is not the time to reverse course. Before I go any further, I want to take a moment and thank Jim and Michaelwitz and his team for working. You got a ticker tape parade. It wasn't very big, though. I want to thank him for working to ensure that the Commonwealth can continue to fund important, long-standing programs without raising taxes. An achievement that was only made possible thanks to the chairman's expertise and experience. It pays to have someone with experience. It's not stopping. Here's the second piece of confetti. 2 accounts. On that note, I'm proud to announce that the House's upcoming budget proposal will continue to fund free school meals for all public school students. And more importantly, or as importantly, along with another year of meeting our commitment towards the full implementation of the Student Opportunity Act. These initiatives were created to support children across the Commonwealth, ensuring that every public school student in Massachusetts receives a high-quality education. I'm also proud of the fact that the House's 26 budget will include more than $1 billion to support the Commonwealth's early education and care sector. As you all know, a robust EEC workforce isn't just essential for the children and families in Massachusetts who rely on that care. It's extremely important for the Commonwealth's employers. I'll get it right, but the employers. From there, however, this year's budget process only gets more complicated. That's because there is still a huge amount of uncertainty regarding what will eventually be cut from the federal budget, especially when you consider that Trump and Elon are poised to make these cuts unilaterally without consulting Congress or anyone else. Yet in the face of that pushback, and contrary to what voters are begging Republicans not to do at town halls across the country, President Trump and Musk continue to promise more cuts to vital programs. State money will not be able to fill every gap created by sweeping cuts at the federal level. We are committed to doing what we can in the House to ensure that residents and businesses here in Massachusetts are protected. In February, as part of our rules reform, the House voted to establish the House Committee on Federal Funding Policy and Accountability, the one that gave Jim such a hard time figuring out. That committee will be chaired by Representative Kathy Lenatra. It will engage residents and businesses and stakeholders who have been impacted by President Trump's actions, a process that will allow us to better understand how we can respond to the developments in Washington. That is not to say we are going to fix everything, but we will need to know what affects you the most. What is the most important whack that you're taking from the dear old feds? The business leaders here today, please know that you have an ally here at the state level that's willing to work with you, when possible, to stave off the significant problems that President Trump creates for you during his time in office. Despite those challenges, I don't want anyone here to be under the impression the House will be distracted by Trump for the next 4 years and subsequently fail to address the enduring affordability challenges that we continue to hear from residents. One of those challenges, for instance, is the ballooning cost of energy bills. The problem was especially difficult this past winter. Governor Haley has said that she plans to file legislation to address this issue, and the House looks forward to working with her administration to deliver meaningful relief to residents who are feeling the pinch of high energy costs. We do understand, however, that this issue is anything but straightforward. As any reforms that we will have to balance the need to contain energy costs with the need to modernize the Commonwealth's energy grid and to make progress toward our emissions reduction goals. As the chair of Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy Committee, we got to slim that one down too. Chairman Mark Cusack has been tasked with helping the House achieve that delicate balance, including ensuring that ratepayers are not overly burdened by the costs associated with these many needed reforms. As part of that effort, the House will vote to establish an internal procedure to better predict the impact that future policy decisions will have on energy costs here in Massachusetts. This proposal will be modeled after the process that the legislature currently uses to evaluate any bill that proposes health insurance coverage mandates. For those of you in the insurance business are well aware of the funded mandate process that CHIA performs on any mandate. We want to determine what the impact of legislation could have. Similarly, this new procedure will require that an outside analysis be conducted on all energy legislation that authorizes a surcharge or that has any other incidental impact on utility rates prior to being adopted by the legislature. This should give policymakers, stakeholders, and the public a better sense of the impact that pending legislation could have on a resident's energy bills. Information that will then be taken into consideration during the legislative process. While containing costs for residents will be a central focus for the House, we also continue to focus on creating more economic and educational opportunities for folks across the Commonwealth. This session, the House will champion legislation that aims to bolster access to early college programming for students. The programming has proven to be effective at reducing the time it takes to earn a degree and to enter the workforce, easing the financial burden that puts college out of the reach for many of our students. I've been a real believer in early college programming, a belief that I know is shared by many folks in this room. I don't have to remind the business leaders and employers here today that increased access to early college programming isn't just beneficial for students. It also leads to more educated workforce and helps to keep talent here in Massachusetts, a prerequisite for maintaining the Commonwealth's edge as a leader in innovation. As you all know, the incredibly high cost of a college education doesn't just act as a barrier for economic mobility, it also becomes an anchor in the form of a debt that can make it impossible for young people to buy a home and start a family, putting the American dream out of reach. This effort underscores the House's ongoing commitment to our colleges and universities, recognizing that the vital role they play in our state's continued prosperity. That being said, there's more than what we can do to meet both student needs and industry demands. I'd like to recognize Merrimack College and the folks at the Association of Private Colleges and Universities who have been leading the push for reduced credit bachelor's degrees. This week, I was pleased to see that the Board of Higher Education moved to consider adopting this innovative approach. A reduced credit bachelor's degree would be especially beneficial for non-traditional students from working families, as it will allow graduates to enter the workforce sooner and with less debt. This is the kind of fresh idea that we need in education right now. Programming that works for students, families, and for our economy. The House is ready to ensure that continued support for these types of innovations, and we will welcome any new ideas as well. I look forward to working with my colleagues in the House to ensure that the legislature is doing everything that it can to create new opportunities for young people in Massachusetts, something that I think we all agree they deserve. It's not just young people that deserve more from their government, though. People of all ages, from all walks of life, deserve a government that works for them. A government that steps in when basic needs become unaffordable, and that steps up when a natural disaster or a pandemic uproots their lives. Business deserves a government that works with them to create opportunity and to cultivate innovation. A government that understands when certain regulations are necessary, but that doesn't inadvertently hinder economic growth with unnecessary red tape. With everything that's happening in Washington these days, it's more important now than ever that we do things differently here in Massachusetts, and that we continue our pursuit of a government that works to better the lives of the people that it serves. To achieve that goal, though, the House will continue to rely on our working relationship with the Commonwealth's business community. So with that, I want to once again thank the Greater Boston Chamber for inviting me to speak with you all this morning in the ticker tape. I continue to be immensely grateful to the Massachusetts business community for the work that you do to support the Commonwealth in your local communities. And I look forward to our continued partnership, regardless of what challenges we may see in front of us. Thank you.
Sit down over there. You want to grab your water? You know, I want to start with healthcare because, you know, you've been a leading voice in the Commonwealth on healthcare policy, and Mihal made reference to the 2006 legislation that transformed healthcare not only in this state but ultimately in the country. And, you know, it became known as Romney Care, but those of us that were around back then know the role that you played in it, and maybe it's time to rename that Mariano Care. What do you think? Last session, you mentioned 5 bills that were passed related to health care. You know, I'd like to talk about sort of what you consider to be unfinished business in that space. You know, it's an ongoing challenge to find the balance between supporting those important industries while confronting costs, access, quality of care. You know, talk about, you know, what you might be thinking about going forward in the healthcare industry.
Well, obviously, when you read any of the write-ups on the cost of health care, prescription drugs are a leading cause, viewed as one of the drivers of the increases. And as we continue to support a burgeoning life sciences development in Cambridge, that every day is coming out with new and better drugs to treat major illnesses, and in some cases cure major illnesses. We've come up with a cure for Hep C. We now have a cure for cystic fibrosis. All of these cost money. And the challenge is going to be, how do we take these poor people who are stricken with these diseases, who can be cured, and get them the drugs and the treatment that they need in an affordable manner? When Sovaldi, the cure for Hep C, came out, it was $5,000 a shot. Far from the reach of a middle class or even lower middle class family. The cost has now dropped significantly. It's in the hundreds of dollars. But the cystic fibrosis cure is about $500 a month. All of these costs, on the one hand, we have funding the research and the development with the companies that are in Cambridge and the Mass Bio, and on the other hand, we can't afford to give them to the people who are sick. These are the challenges that we're going to be faced with going forward. Just one of them. The other is the number of the beds and how we recover and repopulate our hospitals as we deal with the departures of the Stewart hospitals. So these are all things that we'll be looking at. We began to do some of the things around prescription drugs in the last budget, and we have a few more ideas that we think will help. But I am really nervous about the day a cure is found for something like Hep C. Not Hep C, sickle cell, which would have a huge impact on the Massachusetts healthcare budget, because a lot of the folks who are on Mass Health have sickle cell. How do you deny those folks treatment? And how do you provide it when the cost is going to far exceed Sovaldi? So on that cheery note, I'll go back to work.
All right, I think I have a working mic now, so we can keep going. I neglected to recognize someone who's going to become a very close friend of mine, new Chair of Transportation, Jim Arciero, and Chair of Election Laws, Dan Hunt.
You're reading it wrong.
Please welcome Chairman Arciero and Chairman Hunt. Mr. Speaker, you appropriately referenced all of the work accomplished in the legislature in the last session, economic development, housing, you can get on the list, and we're grateful for you acknowledging the work of the Chamber and the partnership that helps get things done like that. And truly, there's a lot of examples you can point to. I want to acknowledge, you mentioned the work that is going to go forward in early childhood education and care, and there's been no stronger leader in the business community working with the legislative leadership on early childhood education and care than my partner at the Business Roundtable, J.D. Chesloff. So J.D., good job. You know, another example of that partnership is the bill that you did on pay transparency and, you know, the advocacy of Brooke Thompson over at AIM on that bill, leader among the business community, and finding a way to craft a bill that can work for everybody. So clearly that type of partnership works. You alluded to, you know, these times are different. And, you know, as you prepare the budget, get ready for the budget, and Chairman Michaelwitz does his work with his team, you know, you have to think about the uncertainty. I know everyone's asking how you're going to deal with this, how you're going to deal with that. Is it one of those years that you have to just assume that, you know, money's going to come and build in flexibility and maybe pivot during the year? Depending upon what happens. How do you treat that uncertainty?
Buy lottery tickets. Listen, that's why I specifically mentioned the Ways and Means Committee. You know, these guys have put together budgets in good times, and now for the first time, there's a big cloud hanging over our heads. And we decided to proceed based on the revenues that we knew we had, and to scrutinize the programs, trying to be as close to level funding as we could be in as many areas as we could be. Not knowing what's going to happen in the future, not knowing if there'll be huge cuts in Medicare and Mass Health and what they're going to do tomorrow or today. I mean, who knows? It could be as recent as today, where they make cuts in Medicaid and Medicare. So we will proceed. We will proceed because that's all we can do. We're charged with putting a balanced budget together, and that's what we have done. We think, I'm amazed that we could keep the commitment to no new taxes. I was a little nervous that would be a real challenge and that the budget would look like it was carved up by a maniac. But this budget doesn't. It's a continuation of what we were doing, especially around the 3C stuff. I was glad we could save the school lunches. And really, we spread the wealth pretty fairly. But we still don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So we could be back in September or October making changes.
Yeah.
But we'll just have to see.
Yeah. You know, on that changing landscape, the uncertainty, Earlier today, my friend Doug Howgate and Mass Taxpayers issued the first in a series of reports they're going to issue. They always do good work on that changing landscape, the implications of changes in federal policy. I'd encourage you all to take a look at that, and I know that the Chair Lenatra will certainly be a friend of Doug as she thinks about how to navigate all of these issues. But one of the issues that sometimes people don't give focus to is the level of employment in Massachusetts that depends on federal funding. I think there's 4,000 federal workers alone, and then all the other types of funding you mentioned. Your thoughts on, some of those sort of, I guess, unappreciated impacts of some of these federal cuts?
Well, the cuts that really bother me.
You want mine?
No. The NIH, the research grants that go into the hospitals and some of the colleges. I don't know if this is working. Yeah, it is working. Those are the things that we are an innovation economy. Our success is really around the innovation that we encourage and we are able to provide based on the trained workforce we're producing in the universities and the hospitals that are leaders nationally. And that funding being cut and just indiscriminately removed is a huge setback for us on a number of different fronts, not just to the folks who go to work every day in these places, but think about the prospects for growth in Massachusetts and what a setback it is to that. Where are the new ideas going to come from? I was watching the news, and I can't watch it. I just changed channels. So, and some woman worked in a lab, and she was in the picket line crying, saying that she wanted to be a research scientist in America, not in Europe or some other country. And it hit home. These are real people who go to work every day, and what they do is extremely important to them. And to have that yanked out from underneath them with no warning, with no rationale, which is even stranger, it's not something we want to be doing. So someone has to stand up and say this stuff. So.
Yep, yep. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to close with a question on housing. Last year, major housing bond bill passed that does so much to address this issue in the coming years. At the same time, the governor put forward an estimate that we need to build 222,000 new housing units over the next decade. We're nowhere near that pace. What do you think the next steps are? And I'd ask if you'd specifically talk about the tension between sort of what the state needs and the issue of local control. We're seeing that play out in the MBTA Communities Act, and is it going to be just a constant sort of mud fight with cities and towns to try to get things done? What's the balance between what the state can do and
well, that's a great question. Right now, everyone's in court, so who knows? But my concern was, as with all state programs, there was a legitimate complaint, I thought, and I'm not a lawyer, so no one can bank on anything I say. But I thought Milton had a legitimate complaint being included in the coverage of the bill as an MBTA community. In their fight, they opened a door, and the auditor, our dear friend, the auditor stepped right in and blew it wide open, saying that it's an unfunded mandate from the state. Well, that drove a number of other communities to jump into the argument. And we looked at how they tried to recover money, and they were putting in for new sidewalks, new pipes, things that had nothing to do with the construction of housing, but were basic infrastructure requirements. Trying to get us to back off from the law. Well, the ultimate decision will be in court, but the Attorney General has said that she didn't view it as an unfunded mandate, and we have the auditor who viewed it as a funded mandate. So once again, we have separate branches of government not agreeing. And I think the courts will decide this, but I think that we need these cities and towns to make a commitment, because if they don't, if they continue to try and exploit any loophole that they can find, we will never hit our target rate. I am lucky I have a development in my district that is hopefully will provide 2,000 homes at the former South Weymouth Naval Air Station. It's only a project that's taken 34 years to get done. So it should be done any day now. And that just goes to show you how difficult this is. We took 3 communities, 3 separate divergent communities, to get them to agree on regulations and zoning issues inside one defined piece of naval property. Well, I think it was likened to the Arab-Israeli peace talks. And to get something took 34 years. So we will continue. All we can do is keep going forward. I thought the MBTA's bill, the bill that we passed, was a good idea. I thought it didn't force anyone to do anything. It just said, if you're going to do something, this is the way we want it. And I don't think that's too much to ask as we pour millions of dollars into the team to try and make it the best system in the United States. And I think we have folks in there now that can do that. And I have extreme confidence in it. So, I want to give the guys the tools to do it.
Speaking of giving the creating the tools to do it and enabling it, last year at this event, you mentioned expanding the MWA district to enable that Weymouth project to go forward. Is that something you'll...
Yeah, yeah. It's my feeling that the success, we get a lot of criticism for state programs that don't work. Let's take a little bow for the programs that do work. The MWRA was something that was forced on us by the courts. We did screw up and miss the federal funding, which we could probably take a blame for. But the fact of the matter is we built a water and sewer system for, I think, 360 communities in sewer, in I don't know how many water communities now. The numbers leave me. But it is a success. It wins awards for water quality. And we produce more water than we use. We actually, I don't know if I should tell everybody this, but in July sometime, they dump water into the ground because they can't contain it all in the Quabbin. We need to take that water and use it for economic development reasons. You've got towns in the South Shore that can't develop. Brockton was under a consent decree because they can't identify a water source. Rockland, Hingham. And when I brought the idea to the governor, he said, well, they're not going to just expand it to the south. He said, let's go north. He said, I'm concerned about Swampscott and what's going to happen up here. So we expanded it to the north, and we will continue to do that. I think it's one of the resources that we are we should be very proud of, and we should tout the success. It is, we tightened up the system. The water systems are tight. I see the mayor of Quincy sitting out there. He can tell you how much it costs, but it was well worth it. We have a system that doesn't flood anymore. It used to flood every rainstorm. But it's a success. And now we got to take that success and build another success off of it. So.
Well, Mr. Speaker, during your remarks, you noted the importance of experience and wisdom, and just listening to you talk about education, healthcare, the MWRA, certainly your experience and wisdom is demonstrated, and we look forward to continuing to partner with you from the business community on all of the issues we talked about today, and thank you for your time today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.